Welcome to the world of science fiction. Don't forget to like and subscribe, so you don't miss new stories. Enjoy the listening. The ochre sun bled across the horizon of Xylos, casting long, skeletal shadows from the mesa formations that clawed at the rust-colored sky. Jax, a figure sculpted from harsh lines and weathered synth leather, squinted against the perpetual dust that swirled around his boots. Xylos was a graveyard of forgotten ambitions, a planet where the wind howled laments for lost civilizations, a perfect backdrop for his line of work. His breath hitched a plume of vapor in the frigid air, momentarily obscuring the scope of his modified laser rifle. The scope's crosshairs settled on a pair of figures in the distance, their silhouette stark against the crumbling facade of a long-dead city. One was tall and graceful, the other small and agile, moving with a wariness that spoke of constant flight. Lyra of Orin, Jax murmured, the name rasping against his vocal implants. And her little shadow, Rena. 5 systems, countless back alleys, and too many close calls had led him to this desolate rock. The bounty on Lyra and her daughter had been substantial, enough to set him up comfortably, maybe even afford him a ticket off the rim and a chance to forget the ghosts that clung to his past. Jack spat a stream of synth tobacco into the dust, the act of familiar ritual before a hunt. He was good at what he did, a ghost in the machine, a predator who knew how to exploit weakness. But something about this particular contract gnawed at him. Rumors whispered about Lyra's abilities, her connection to ancient Orani technology, and the lengths the consortium would go to acquire her. He checked the charge on his rifle, the hum of the weapon a comforting presence in the desolate landscape. He was a tool, honed by years of conflict, designed to deliver results, no questions asked. But Xylos had a way of stripping away pretense, leaving only raw choices in the biting wind. The ruins loomed closer, a labyrinth of broken spires and collapsing archways, a monument to a civilization that had reached for the stars and fallen back to dust. Jax moved with the practiced ease of a seasoned tracker, his senses attuned to the subtle shifts in the wind, the crunch of sand underfoot, the almost imperceptible vibrations that signaled the presence of others. He found them in what appeared to be an ancient marketplace, a cluster of stalls long since ravaged by time and scavengers. Lyra stood protectively in front of Rena, her posture radiating a fierce defiance that belied her situation. Her skin, a shimmering shade of azure, caught the fading light, highlighting the intricate patterns that adorned her face. Her eyes burned with a fierce intelligence, a refusal to surrender. Rena, barely past her 10th cycle, clung to her mother's leg, her large, expressive eyes darting nervously around the ruins. Despite her fear, there was a spark of resilience in her gaze, a hint of the power that the consortium so desperately craved. Lyra of Orin, Jack said, his voice amplified by his helmet's comm system. I've been tracking you for a long time. Lyra's hand tightened on the ancient Orani bow she held, the weapon humming with latent energy. I know who you are, she said, her voice clear and strong despite the weariness etched on her face. You're a bounty hunter, sent to collect us. That's right, Jack said, leveling his rifle. It doesn't have to be complicated. Come quietly, and I'll guarantee your safety. Lyra laughed, a short, bitter sound that echoed through the ruins. Safety? From the consortium? You're either incredibly naive or insultingly stupid. I'm a realist, Jack said, his finger tightening on the trigger. I deal in facts, and the fact is, you're worth a lot of credits to someone. Credits you'll never get to spend, Lyra said, drawing back the bow. A bolt of pure energy crackled between the weapon's limbs, illuminating her face with an ethereal glow. I won't let them take my daughter. Jax tensed, his instincts screaming a warning. Lyra was more than just a fugitive, she was a force to be reckoned with. But before he could react, a volley of laser fire erupted from the shadows, tearing through the ruins. Contact. Jax barked into his comm, multiple hostiles, corporate markings. Lyra cursed under her breath, her eyes widening in alarm. The consortium, she said. They're here. The mercenaries emerged from the ruins, clad in black armor and armed with heavy weaponry. They moved with ruthless efficiency, their laser fire cutting down anything that stood in their path. Jax cursed his luck. He wasn't the only one who had been tracking Lyra. The consortium was closing in, and they wouldn't hesitate to eliminate anyone who got in their way, including him. He had a choice to make. He could stand aside and let the mercenaries take Lyra and Rena, collect his payment, and walk away. Or he could intervene, risk his life, and defy the most powerful corporation in the galaxy. His hand hovered over the trigger, his mind racing. He was a bounty hunter, not a hero. He was supposed to be driven by profit, not conscience. But as he looked at Lyra, her eyes blazing with defiance, and at Rena, her face etched with fear, he felt a flicker of something he thought he had long forgotten. "Get behind me," Jax said, his voice tight. "I'll cover you." Lyra stared at him, her expression a mixture of surprise and suspicion. "Why?" she asked. "You're supposed to be hunting us." "Things change," Jax said, unleashing a barrage of laser fire at the approaching mercenaries. "Now move." Lyra didn't hesitate. She grabbed Rena's hand and darted behind Jax, her bow crackling with energy, ready to strike. Together, they fought their way through the ruins, Jax's tactical skills and Lyra's raw power proving a deadly combination. They moved from cover to cover, dodging laser fire and taking down mercenaries with ruthless precision. But the consortium forces were relentless, their numbers overwhelming. They were closing in, boxing them in the ruins. "We can't stay here," Jax said, his breath coming in ragged gasps. "We need to find a way out." "There's a tunnel," Lyra said, pointing to a darkened passage. "It leads to the old catacombs. I don't know where it goes, but it's our only chance." "Let's go," Jax said, leading the way. They plunged into the darkness of the tunnel, the sounds of laser fire echoing behind them. The air was thick with the smell of dust and decay, the darkness pressing in on them like a shroud. As they moved deeper into the tunnel, Rena suddenly stopped, her eyes widening. "Wait," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "I feel something powerful." Before anyone could react, the ground beneath them began to tremble, the walls of the tunnel shuddering violently. A blinding light erupted from the depths of the catacombs, throwing Jax, Lyra, and Rena to the ground. When Jax regained his senses, he found himself in a vast, cavernous chamber, the air alive with energy. In the center of the chamber stood a massive, ancient machine, its intricate workings humming with power. And standing before the machine was a figure clad in black armor, his face hidden behind a reflective visor. "Welcome," the figure said, his voice amplified by a vocoder. "I've been expecting you." The figure in black armor advanced, his heavy boots echoing in the vast chamber. "Silas," Lyra hissed, her voice filled with venom. "I should have known you'd be behind this." "Lyra," Silas replied, his voice devoid of emotion. "It's time you and your daughter came home. The consortium has plans for you both." Jax raised his rifle, his eyes narrowed behind his helmet. "I don't think so," he said. "You're outnumbered." Silas chuckled, a dry, rasping sound. "You think you can stand against the consortium, bounty hunter? You're out of your depth." He gestured, and several more mercenaries emerged from the shadows, their weapons trained on Jax, Lyra, and Rena. "Maybe," Jax said, "but I've been in deeper waters than you can imagine." He fired a precise burst, taking down 2 mercenaries before they could react. Lyra unleashed a torrent of energy bolts from her bow, striking down several more. But the mercenaries were well trained and heavily armed, their laser fire forcing Jax and Lyra to take cover behind the ancient machine. Rena stood between them, her eyes wide with fear. "Mother," she whispered, "I can feel it, the machine, it's alive." "Stay back, Rena," Lyra said, her voice urgent. "It's too dangerous." But Rena didn't listen. She stepped forward, her hands outstretched towards the machine. A wave of energy emanated from her body, washing over the ancient device. The machine hummed louder, its intricate workings glowing with an ethereal light. Symbols on its surface began to shift and change, ancient Orani script flickering across its surface. "What's happening?" Silas demanded, his voice laced with concern. "She's activating it," Lyra said, her eyes wide with awe. "She's unlocking its power." Silas snarled and raised his weapon, aiming at Rena. "Stop her," he commanded. Jax lunged forward, intercepting Silas's shot with his own body. The laser bolt seared through his armor, sending a jolt of pain through his nervous system. "Go!" Jax shouted, his voice strained. "Get her out of here." Lyra didn't hesitate. She grabbed Rena's hand and raced towards a darkened passage, the machine's energy guiding their way. Jax fought a desperate rearguard action, trading shots with Silas and his mercenaries. He was outgunned and outnumbered, but he refused to yield. He had made a choice, and he would see it through to the end. Finally, with a desperate burst of speed, he managed to break free and follow Lyra and Rena into the passage. They emerged into a maze of tunnels, the machine's energy resonating through the ancient stone. The air crackled with power, making their hair stand on end. "Where are we going?" Jax asked, his voice breathless. "I don't know," Lyra said, "but the machine is guiding us. It knows where we need to be." They followed the tunnels for what seemed like hours, the sounds of pursuit echoing behind them. Finally, they reached a dead end, a solid wall of rock blocking their path. "We're trapped," Jax said, his voice grim. But Rena stepped forward, her eyes glowing with the machine's energy. She placed her hand on the wall, and the stone began to crumble, revealing a hidden doorway. "This way," she said, her voice filled with a strange, otherworldly power. They stepped through the doorway and found themselves in a small, secluded chamber. In the center of the chamber stood a shimmering portal, its surface swirling with colors that defied description. "What is that?" Jax asked, his voice filled with wonder. "I don't know," Lyra said, "but I think it's our way out." Silas's voice echoed from behind them. "You can't escape me, Lyra. The consortium will find you, no matter where you go." "We'll see about that," Lyra said, her voice filled with defiance. She grabbed Rena's hand and stepped into the portal. Jax hesitated for a moment, then followed them into the unknown. The portal closed behind them, leaving Silas and his mercenaries stranded in the ancient chamber. When Jax regained his senses, he found himself standing in a grimy alleyway, the air thick with the smell of synth spice and engine grease. He looked around, his eyes scanning the unfamiliar surroundings. "Where are we?" he asked. "Nar Shada," Lyra said, her voice grim. "The smuggler's moon. A haven for criminals and outcasts." "Perfect," Jax said. "Just what we needed." Nar Shada was a sprawling metropolis built on corruption and vice, a place where anything could be bought or sold, and where the only law was survival. It was a dangerous place, but it was also a place where they could disappear, at least for a while. "We need to find somewhere safe," Lyra said. "Somewhere we can lay low." "I know a place," Jax said. "A derelict space station called the Driftwood. It's a haven for smugglers and outcasts. No questions asked." "Can we trust them?" Lyra asked, her eyes filled with suspicion. "Not really," Jax said, "but they owe me a favor." They made their way through the crowded streets of Nar Shada, dodging swoop gangs and avoiding the watchful eyes of the Hut enforcers. Finally, they reached the Driftwood, a hulking mass of metal and rust that hung precariously in orbit around the moon. The Driftwood was a lawless place, a haven for those who lived on the fringes of society. Smugglers, bounty hunters, and pirates mingled in the station's dimly lit cantinas, trading stories and plotting their next score. Jax led Lyra and Rena through the station's labyrinthine corridors, his senses on high alert. He knew that the consortium would be looking for them, and he couldn't afford to let his guard down. They reached a secluded docking bay, where a battered freighter was moored. "This is it," Jack said. "My old ship, the Wanderer." He opened the hatch and led them inside. The Wanderer was small and cramped, but it was home. It was where he had spent most of his life, traveling the galaxy and making a living as a bounty hunter. "It's not much," Jack said, "but it's safe." "It'll do," Lyra said, her voice tired. They settled into the ship's cramped quarters, the hum of the engines a comforting presence. Jax went to the cockpit and activated the ship's comm system. "Jax to Zara," he said. "Come in, Zara." A crackling voice answered. "Jax? Is that really you? I haven't heard from you in years." "It's me, Zara," Jax said. "I need your help. I'm on the driftwood, and I'm in a bit of trouble." "Trouble is your middle name, Jax," Zara said. "What's going on?" "I need information," Jax said. "I'm looking for information on the consortium's interest in Lyra of Oran." There was a long pause. "Lyra of Oran?" Zara said, her voice suddenly wary. "That's dangerous territory, Jax. The consortium wants her badly." "I know," Jax said. "That's why I need your help." "What do you know?" Zara hesitated for a moment, then sighed. "All right, Jax," she said. "I owe you one. But be careful. This information could get you killed." "I'm used to it," Jax said. "Just tell me what you know." Zara explained that the consortium believed Lyra possessed knowledge of ancient Orani technology that could give them a significant advantage in their ongoing power struggles. More specifically, they were interested in Rena and her latent abilities. Rumor had it that Rena was a key to unlocking even greater Orani secrets. As Zara spoke, Jax noticed a flicker of movement on his ship's sensors. "Zara, I think we have company," he said. "I'll call you back." He cut the connection and turned to Lyra. "We have to go," he said. "The consortium knows we're here." "How?" Lyra asked, her eyes wide with alarm. "They're tracking us," Jax said. "They must have planted a tracker on us back in the ruins." He grabbed his rifle and checked its charge. "Get ready," he said. "We're about to have visitors." A boarding party of consortium mercenaries stormed the Wanderer, their weapons blazing. Jax and Lyra fought them off, using the ship's cramped corridors to their advantage. But the mercenaries were relentless, their numbers overwhelming. They were closing in, forcing Jax and Lyra back towards the cargo hold. "We're running out of room," Jax said, his voice strained. Suddenly, Rena stepped forward, her eyes glowing with a strange, otherworldly power. She raised her hands, and the mercenaries froze in their tracks, their weapons clattering to the floor. "What's happening?" Silas shouted from the doorway. "What's going on?" Rena focused her power, and the mercenaries began to levitate, their bodies twisting and contorting in the air. They screamed in agony as Rena unleashed her telekinetic abilities, throwing them against the walls and ceiling. Silas watched in horror as his mercenaries were brutally tossed around like ragdolls. "Stop her," he screamed. "Stop her now." But it was too late. Rena's power reached its peak, and the mercenaries were thrown out of the ship, hurtling through the docking bay towards the void of space. With a final surge of energy, Rena collapsed, her body trembling with exhaustion. "Rena!" Lyra cried, rushing to her daughter's side. Jack stared in awe at the devastation Rena had wrought. He had never seen anything like it. The kid was powerful, more powerful than he could have ever imagined. "We have to get out of here," Jack said. "Now." He fired up the Wanderer's engines and blasted out of the docking bay, leaving Silas and the shattered remains of his boarding party behind. As they jumped into hyperspace, Jax knew that they had only bought themselves a little time. The consortium would be after them, and they wouldn't stop until they had Lyra and Rena in their grasp. They were on the run, hunted by the most powerful corporation in the galaxy. Their only hope was to find a way to stay one step ahead, to find a place where they could finally be safe. But in a galaxy ruled by greed and power, safety was a rare and precious commodity. Jax bristled, a wave of irritation washing over him. "Mind your own business, kid," he retorted, but he lowered the cigarette anyway, snuffing it out against the wall. "I'll smoke outside." Lyra glanced at Rena, a flicker of concern in her eyes. "Thank you, Rena," she said softly. To Jax, she added, "She can't help it. She feels what others feel." "Yeah, well, maybe she should learn to tune it out," Jax muttered, turning away. He walked to the entrance of the abandoned mining complex, stepping out into the cold, thin air of the forgotten moon they had landed on. Xylos's moon, designated LX-492, was a desolate place, scarred by ancient mining operations and long-forgotten wars. But it was also remote, far from the consortium's reach, at least for now. Jax took a deep breath, the icy air stinging his lungs. He needed a distraction, something to take his mind off the consortium, Lyra and Rena, and the nagging feeling that he had made a terrible mistake. He pulled out his comm unit and activated it. "Jax to Zara," he said. "Are you still there?" Zara's voice crackled through the comm. "Jax. I thought you were dead. I heard the consortium hit the driftwood hard." "We got out," Jax said. "But we need a place to lay low for a while. Somewhere the consortium won't find us." "That's a tall order, Jax," Zara said. "The consortium has eyes everywhere." "I know," Jax said. "But I'm betting they're not looking in the outer rim. I need a safe house, somewhere remote." Zara paused for a moment. "There's a forgotten moon, LX-492, she said. "It's desolate, but there are old Orani ruins there. Legend has it that a scholar lives there in hiding. Kalen, they call him. An eccentric, but harmless. He values his privacy." "Orani ruins?" Jax asked, his interest piqued. "What kind of ruins?" "Ancient stuff," Zara said. "Temples, libraries, maybe even lost technology. No one knows for sure. Kalen keeps to himself." "Sounds perfect," Jax said. "Can you give me the coordinates?" Zara sent the coordinates, and Jax thanked her, severing the connection. He turned back to Lyra and Rena, a plan forming in his mind. "We're moving again," Jax said. "There's someone I want you to meet." Lyra frowned, her hand instinctively reaching for her bow. "Who?" "An old scholar named Kalen," Jax said. "He lives in the Orani ruins on this moon. He might be able to help us understand why the consortium is after you." Lyra hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "All right," she said. "But I'm watching you." They packed their meager belongings and set out across the desolate landscape. The journey was long and arduous, the terrain unforgiving. But Jax pushed them onward, driven by a sense of urgency. After several hours of travel, they reached the ruins, a sprawling complex of crumbling structures and overgrown vegetation. The air was thick with the scent of decay and the silence was broken only by the whisper of the wind. "This place gives me the creeps," Jax said, his hand resting on his rifle. "It's beautiful," Rena said, her eyes wide with wonder. "I can feel the history here, the power." They ventured deeper into the ruins, following a narrow path that wound its way through the overgrown structures. Finally, they reached a secluded courtyard, where a lone figure sat meditating beneath a gnarled tree. The figure was tall and slender, with long, flowing hair and piercing blue eyes. He wore simple robes, adorned with intricate Orani symbols. "Kalen?" Lyra asked, her voice tentative. The figure opened his eyes and turned to face them, a look of surprise on his face. "Lyra of Oran," he said, his voice soft and melodic. "I have been expecting you." Lyra stepped forward, her eyes filled with a mixture of hope and apprehension. "You know why we're here?" she asked. Kalen nodded. "I have foreseen your arrival," he said. The threads of fate have led you to this place. He gestured for them to sit, and they settled down on the stone floor of the courtyard. Kalen looked at Rena, his eyes filled with a strange light. She is the key, he said. The one who will unlock the secrets of the past and shape the future of our people. What do you mean? Lyra asked, her voice trembling. Kalen explained that Rena possessed a unique gift, a rare combination of telepathic and telekinetic abilities that made her a conduit for ancient Orani technology. He revealed a prophecy foretelling the rise of a powerful Orani who would either save their people or destroy them. The consortium wants her power, Kalen said. They believe they can control her, use her to unlock the secrets of our ancestors. But Rena is just a child, Lyra protested. She doesn't understand any of this. She will, Kalen said. With training, guidance, she will learn to control her powers and fulfill her destiny. Jax listened to their conversation, a sense of unease growing within him. He didn't like prophecies, or destiny, or any of that mystical mumbo-jumbo. He preferred facts, logic, things he could understand. But he couldn't deny that Rena was special, that she possessed abilities beyond his comprehension. And he couldn't deny that the consortium was willing to do anything to get their hands on her. So, what do we do? Jax asked. How do we protect her? Kalen turned to him, his eyes piercing. You must guide her, protect her from those who would exploit her power. You must help her fulfill her destiny. Me? Jax asked, his voice incredulous. I'm a bounty hunter, not a babysitter. You have a choice to make, Kalen said. You can continue down your current path, driven by greed and self-interest. Or you can embrace a higher purpose, a chance to make a difference in the galaxy. Jax stared at Kalen, his mind racing. He had spent his life chasing credits, avoiding commitments, running from his past. But now, he was being offered something more, a chance to be something more. I don't know, Jax said, his voice uncertain. I need time to think. Time is a luxury we don't have, Kalen said, his voice urgent. The consortium is coming. I can feel their presence drawing near. As if on cue, the ground began to tremble, the air filled with the whine of engines. The ruins were surrounded by consortium gunships, their weapons trained on the courtyard. They found us, Lyra said, her voice filled with despair. Not yet, Jax said, his hand resting on his rifle. We're not going down without a fight. Kalen rose to his feet, his eyes blazing with power. There is a way, he said. A hidden chamber beneath the ruins. It contains an ancient artifact, a device that can amplify psychic abilities. Can it help Rena? Lyra asked. It can unlock her full potential, Kalen said. But it is also dangerous. The chamber is filled with traps, guarded by ancient spirits. We don't have a choice, Jax said. Lead the way. Kalen led them through the ruins, his knowledge of the ancient structures guiding them through the maze of tunnels and passageways. They dodged laser fire from the pursuing mercenaries, their every step fraught with danger. Finally, they reached a hidden entrance, a narrow passage that led down into the depths of the earth. Kalen activated a series of ancient mechanisms, and the passage opened, revealing a dark and foreboding chamber. This is it, Kalen said. The Chamber of Echoes. Be warned, the spirits of the Orani ancestors guard this place. They will test your worthiness. He stepped into the chamber, followed by Lyra and Rena. Jax hesitated for a moment, then took a deep breath and followed them into the darkness. As they ventured deeper into the chamber, the air grew colder, the silence more profound. Shadows danced on the walls, and whispers echoed through the darkness. Suddenly, the ground beneath them began to tremble, and a spectral figure materialized before them, its eyes glowing with an eerie light. You have trespassed on sacred ground, the figure said, its voice echoing through the chamber. You must prove your worthiness to proceed. Jax raised his rifle, his finger tightening on the trigger. I don't have time for games, he said. Get out of our way. The spectral figure laughed, a chilling sound that sent shivers down Jax's spine. You cannot defeat us with weapons, it said. You must face your inner demons, confront your past. The figure lunged at Jax, its spectral form passing through him like a ghost. Jax felt a surge of cold, a wave of despair washing over him. He staggered backward, his mind filled with images of his past failures, his lost loves, his broken dreams. He collapsed to his knees, his body racked with sobs. He had tried to bury his past, to forget the pain, but it was all coming back to haunt him. Lyra and Rena watched in horror as Jax succumbed to the spectral figure's influence. They knew that they had to do something, or they would all be lost. Rena stepped forward, her eyes glowing with power. She reached out to Jax, her telepathic abilities reaching into his mind, soothing his pain, calming his fears. Jax felt a surge of warmth, a sense of peace washing over him. He opened his eyes and looked at Rena, his heart filled with gratitude. Thank you, he said, his voice choked with emotion. Rena smiled, her eyes filled with compassion. You are not alone, she said. We are here for you. Jax rose to his feet, his resolve renewed. He looked at the spectral figure, his eyes filled with determination. You cannot defeat me, he said. I have faced my demons, and I have emerged stronger. The spectral figure hissed and vanished, its power broken. The path ahead was clear, leading deeper into the Chamber of Echoes. They continued their journey, facing more trials and tribulations, overcoming each obstacle with courage and determination. Finally, they reached the heart of the chamber, where the ancient artifact awaited them. It was a massive crystal, pulsating with energy, its surface covered in intricate Orani symbols. The air around it crackled with power, the very ground vibrating with its presence. This is it, Kalen said. The amplifier. It will unlock Rena's full potential. Lyra stepped forward, her eyes filled with hope. What do we do? She asked. Kalen instructed them on how to activate the amplifier, guiding them through the ancient rituals and incantations. Rena stood before the crystal, her hands outstretched, her body trembling with power. As she began to chant the ancient words, the crystal began to glow brighter, its energy surging through her body. She closed her eyes, her mind opening to the infinite possibilities of the universe. Suddenly, the chamber began to shake violently, the walls crumbling around them. The consortium had breached the ruins, their forces closing in. We have to hurry, Jax said, his voice urgent. Rena continued her chant, her power growing stronger with each passing moment. The crystal pulsed with energy, unleashing a wave of psychic power that swept through the ruins, disorienting the consortium forces, disrupting their communications. But it was not enough. The consortium was relentless, their numbers overwhelming. They were closing in, their weapons trained on the chamber. Silas's voice boomed through the ruins. Lyra. Rena. Surrender now, or face the consequences. Lyra looked at Rena, her eyes filled with fear. We can't let them have her, she said. I know, Jax said, his hand resting on his rifle. We'll fight to the end. Suddenly, Rena's eyes snapped open, her pupils glowing with an unearthly light. She raised her hands, and the crystal unleashed a final surge of energy, creating a blinding flash of light. When the light subsided, Jax, Lyra, and Rena were gone. The Chamber of Echoes was empty, the ancient artifact silent once more. Silas stared in disbelief at the empty chamber, his face contorted with rage. Find them. He screamed. Find them now. They can't have gotten far. But it was too late. Jax, Lyra, and Rena had vanished, transported to an unknown location by the power of the amplifier. Their journey had just begun, their destiny yet to be fulfilled. The world twisted around Jax, colors blurring into streaks of light and shadow. He felt the sensation of falling, of being pulled through a vortex of energy. Then, Just as suddenly, it stopped. He gasped for air, his lungs burning, his head swimming. He found himself in a massive chamber, the air thick with a strange, humming energy. The walls were made of polished metal, etched with intricate Orani symbols that glowed with an ethereal light. In the center of the chamber stood a colossal machine, its workings a dizzying array of gears, wires, and glowing crystals. It pulsed with power, its energy resonating through the very core of his being. "Where are we?" Jax asked, his voice barely a whisper. "The heart of the machine," Kalen said, his eyes wide with awe. "An ancient Orani construct, a device of unimaginable power." Lyra stared at the machine, her face a mixture of wonder and apprehension. "What does it do?" she asked. "It amplifies psychic abilities," Kalen said. "It can enhance the powers of anyone who connects with it." He turned to Rena, his eyes filled with hope. "This is what you need, Rena. This is how you can unlock your full potential." Rena stepped forward, her eyes drawn to the machine. She reached out her hand, her fingers trembling as she touched the cool metal surface. A surge of energy coursed through her body, her mind flooded with images and sensations. She gasped, her eyes widening with a mixture of fear and excitement. "I can feel it," she said, her voice barely audible. "It's so powerful." "Let it flow through you, Rena," Kalen said. "Embrace its power, and let it guide you." Rena closed her eyes, her mind opening to the machine's energy. She began to chant in the ancient Orani language, her voice growing stronger with each passing moment. The machine hummed louder, its lights glowing brighter. The energy in the chamber intensified, making their hair stand on end. Suddenly, a voice echoed through the chamber, cold and menacing. "So, this is where you've been hiding." Silas stepped into the chamber, followed by a squad of heavily armed mercenaries. He smirked, his eyes fixed on Rena. "I must commend you, Lyra," he said. "You lead us right to what we were looking for. Your cooperation would have saved so much trouble, now I have to do this the hard way." Jax raised his rifle, his finger tightening on the trigger. "Not if I have anything to say about it," he said. Silas laughed. "You think you can stop me, bounty hunter? You're nothing but a pawn in my game." He gestured to his mercenaries, who opened fire on Jax and his companions. Laser bolts ripped through the chamber, tearing holes in the walls and sending sparks flying from the machine. Jax and Lyra returned fire, their shots precise and deadly. But the mercenaries were well trained and heavily armed, their numbers overwhelming. Kalen raised his hands, unleashing a wave of psychic energy that sent several mercenaries flying through the air. But Silas was prepared, his armor shielding him from the brunt of the attack. "Enough of this," Silas said, his voice laced with impatience. "I'm taking the girl." He lunged towards Rena, his hand outstretched to grab her. But Lyra intercepted him, her bow crackling with energy. She fired a bolt of pure energy at Silas, but he deflected it with his armored gauntlet. The bolt struck the machine, causing it to shudder violently. "No!" Kalen cried, his eyes filled with alarm. "You'll overload it." Silas ignored him, his eyes fixed on Rena. He grabbed her arm, his grip like a vice. "Come with me, girl," he said. "It's time you learned your true purpose." Rena struggled against his grip, her eyes filled with terror. She closed her eyes and focused her mind, channeling the machine's energy. A surge of power coursed through her body, her eyes glowing with an unearthly light. She unleashed a telekinetic blast that sent Silas flying backward, crashing into the wall. The machine hummed louder, its energy intensifying. The chamber began to shake violently, the walls cracking and groaning. "She's overloading it," Kalen cried. "We have to get out of here." But it was too late. Rena's power had reached its peak, the machine unable to contain its energy. A blinding light filled the chamber, followed by a deafening explosion. Jax felt himself being thrown through the air, his body slamming against the wall. He blacked out, his mind filled with chaos and confusion. When he regained consciousness, he found himself lying on the floor, his body aching all over. The chamber was in ruins, the machine shattered into pieces. He looked around for Lyra, Rena, and Kalen, his heart pounding with dread. He found them lying nearby, unconscious but alive. Silas was nowhere to be seen, his fate uncertain. The mercenaries were scattered throughout the chamber, some dead, others injured and disoriented. Jax helped Lyra, Rena, and Kalen to their feet, his mind racing. He didn't know what had happened, but he knew that they had to get out of there. "Come on," he said, his voice urgent. "We have to go." They stumbled through the ruins of the chamber, searching for a way out. The air was thick with smoke and dust, the darkness illuminated only by the flickering lights of their weapons. Finally, they reached a hidden passage, a narrow tunnel that led into the depths of the earth. They followed the tunnel, their hearts pounding with each step. The tunnel opened into a vast cavern, its ceiling lost in shadow. In the center of the cavern stood a shimmering portal, its surface swirling with colors that defied description. "What is that?" Jax asked, his voice filled with wonder. "A gateway," Kalen said, his eyes wide with awe. "A portal to another world." "Another world?" Lyra asked, her voice incredulous. "The Oranai had the ability to travel between dimensions," Kalen said. "This portal may lead to a hidden colony, a place where our people can finally be safe." "But how do we know it's safe?" Jax asked. "How do we know it's not a trap?" "We don't," Kalen said. "But we have no other choice. The consortium will be here soon, and we can't let them capture Rena." He turned to Rena, his eyes filled with hope. "It's up to you, Rena," he said. "You must decide whether to take this chance, to risk everything for the hope of a new beginning." Rena looked at the portal, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and excitement. She closed her eyes and focused her mind, reaching out to the portal with her psychic abilities. She gasped, her eyes widening with a mixture of wonder and awe. "I can feel it," she said. "It's calling to me. It's showing me a world of peace and beauty." She opened her eyes, her face filled with determination. "We have to go," she said. "We have to take this chance." Lyra nodded, her eyes filled with hope. She grabbed Rena's hand and stepped towards the portal. Jax hesitated for a moment, his mind filled with doubts and uncertainties. But he knew that he couldn't abandon them. He had come too far, risked too much. He took a deep breath and followed Lyra and Rena into the portal. Kalen smiled, a look of peace on his face. He stepped into the portal, his journey finally complete. The portal shimmered and vanished, leaving the cavern empty and silent. The only evidence of their passage was the lingering scent of ozone and the faint echo of their hopes and fears. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for next part.